The Trump administration has no idea what it is getting into with Venezuela. The idea that Trump can capture Nicolas Maduro and everything's going to magically work out is true, as I called it earlier, fantasy politics. It sounds tough and rough on TV, and the moment that it meets reality, it collapses. And history makes that very clear. Now, let me kind of reset a little bit of the backstory. For years, Venezuela was not an enemy of the United States. It was really a partner. And it was a pretty close partner, especially when it comes to oil. You had American companies deeply embedded in Venezuela for much of the 20th century. We have American refineries depending on Venezuelan crude. We've talked before about how the type of oil that we can harvest in the United States is not actually the type of oil that United States refineries are best equipped to process. That's why we export a lot of our oil and import a lot of the stuff that we refine. We've talked about that before. Now, the relationship between the US and Venezuela broke down after nationalization and later under Hugo Chavez, when American assets were seized and contracts were ripped up. And this is a very important history in understanding what's going on here, because it explains why this isn't just a difficult situation. It's a thermonuclear situation. If this were really about regime change, you wouldn't leave the entire regime in place other than just Maduro himself. You don't remove one guy, keep the same generals, VP, power brokers, corrupt institutions, and pretend that you've even done regime change. Now, I'm not saying this as a supporter of regime change. I'm against American involvement in regime change in Central and South America. But if that's what you claim to be doing, you're failing to do it. And that is exactly the kind of chaos that the U.S. has been blamed for in Latin America for decades. Now, Trump's people float this other explanation, and Trump says we're going to get the oil, we're going to get American companies involved. And the idea is that American oil companies are going to want to rush in and get involved, rebuild Venezuela's energy sector, and just make a ton of money. But now the problem seems to be that the American oil companies don't want to do it. Venezuela's oil infrastructure is ancient, and the refineries are falling apart, pipelines barely function. It could take tens of billions of dollars just to stabilize production, forget about expanding it and profiting from it. And companies remember what happened last time. They remember the nationalization. They remember the sanctions. They remember assets that were frozen and deals that were broken. And when you do that and add Trump to the mix as one of the most impulsive, erratic, glad to tear up agreements types of guys, this stops looking like an opportunity for the American oil companies, and it looks like a legal and financial nightmare. Now, you might be saying, David, it sounds like you're saying it would be a good deal if the American companies could make money. No. I'm going through the purported list of explanations as to why they're doing this and pointing out that these explanations either fail or won't function in practice. Now, from a business standpoint, it would make no sense to get involved here, and I understand that. So again, the question becomes, who does this make sense for? The most dark and conspiratorial answer would be, this makes a lot of sense for Vladimir Putin. Because once the United States openly starts talking about grabbing countries for strategic interests, it becomes a lot easier for Putin to go, we're going to keep Ukraine. That is it. And that is a precedent that Trump is normalizing here. As I alluded to earlier, it doesn't stop with Russia and Ukraine. China hears it and says, wait a second, what about our ambitions in Taiwan? If the message from Trump becomes great powers take what they want and Putin is allowed to do the same, then why wouldn't China say this sounds like the absolute perfect time to go in after Taiwan? Now, the irony of all of this is that Donald Trump believes it makes him look really strong. We'll look at video from Trump's recent statements, and he just has an air of grandiosity where he's just such a big, strong boy here. But what it actually does is invite rejection from allies who remember how American interventionism has gone completely wrong, rejection from companies who don't want to get involved in such an unstable situation, and rejection from markets that don't want to gamble on a president who treats foreign policy like a stunt. So there's really no strategy here. This is impulsivity dressed up as toughness. Trump's about to learn how it can go wrong. But for our purposes, as we we start with this is a blank notebook, but we cross off narco, We cross off authoritarianism. We cross off regime change. We're maybe even crossing oil off as an explanation. Is Trump's disinhibited dementia to blame for this entire thing? We're going to consider that in a moment. For people wondering, I'm wearing my Obama t-shirt. Hold on, here it is. This is a David Pakman Show item. The back, I don't know if you can see, has the David Pakman Show logo on the back. This item is selling like hotcakes on the David Pakman Show store, which you can find at store.davidpakman.com. The Obama t-shirt. All right, very quick break. What a show today, quite frankly.